and welcome. I'm Vanessa Roberts, and this is the Power of Technology series on Federal News Network. Today, we're going to talk about how artificial intelligence transformations are really reshaping the future of government and public services, and also look at what's happening with AI and machine learning right now. Our guests today are Tony Celeste. He's the Executive Director and General Manager for Public Sector at Ingram Micro, and Art Villanueva. He's the Chief AI ML Technology Architect for Federal Strategic Programs at Dell Technologies. Welcome, Tony and Art.
Good afternoon, Vanessa.
Good afternoon.
It's great to see you guys. Thank you so much for doing this today. I really appreciate it. Let's start off by talking about the role that artificial intelligence and machine learning are playing today in government operations and public services, and maybe share a few explicit examples with us. You want to start, Art?
Yeah, absolutely. In general, there are a lot. I mean, probably the more apt question is, what does AI and ML not touch? Because everything within the government is going to be affected by AI and ML. But I like to categorize the areas in kind of a few large buckets. One is improving efficiency and accuracy. That includes automating routine tasks, automating the data entry type of tasks, and sorting and responding to public inquiries, improving speed and accuracy of document processing. As we know, the government has tons and tons of documents. One of our customers recently, one of the national labs, I know had millions of documents that need to be sorted out. So that's one of the things that AI and ML can help with. The second bucket I like to talk about is enhanced decision making and predictive capabilities. So that includes improved planning and resource allocation. One of the things that I like to talk about also is infrastructure maintenance. And with predictive maintenance, you can now figure out when something is about to break and kind of take action even before actual maintenance has to happen because something has broken. And then not a lot of people talk about this, but improving relationships with your citizenry. There's a lot of people don't trust the government and don't like dealing with the government. And AI and ML, as we have seen, such as using things such as ChatGPT and OpenAI's technology, we can mitigate some of that. Those of you that have worked with the DMV and the post office or dealt with them in the past, those are prime examples of where AI and ML can be used.
Tony, you want to jump in and add a few things?
Art touched on a lot of broad areas there as it relates to artificial intelligence and machine learning. And I think one of the most unique things is, the federal government's not always known for being an early adopter of technology. And in the case of artificial intelligence and machine learning, they really have been. They've been using it since its infancy in many different ways. And I think if we look at it around maybe what we would call narrow AI versus generative AI. And we're at that stage right now where it's transforming, and that's kind of opening, broad areas. But take some specific examples like the NASA rovers, which went to Mars. Well, those systems were in development many, many years before something was launched and then had to travel all the way there. And the spirit and the opportunity were navigating on the surface of Mars without human intervention. So there was a really good example. The Food and Drug Administration uses a handheld device today to visually make a comparison of a pharmaceutical to determine if it's counterfeit or fraudulent. So that's you see the application in terms of public safety. And then we're all reliant on getting the weather today. And so many things are impacted based on weather-related activities. as could result in natural disasters, but also when our military and our first responders are dealing with situations related to public safety. So all of those are really examples of how the government's already been using and employing AI and machine learning, and it's only going to continue as generative AI advances.
Well, let's move into that area a little bit. So we've talked a little bit about what's already happening and that there's been a lot of use of AI and ML, and it's a lot of times people aren't even aware how much it's being used. But let's talk about what the opportunities are, right? What are the opportunities that might be on the near horizon or maybe even a little bit farther out? For instance, one thing that comes to mind is maybe the challenge of maintaining institutional knowledge in the government. That's a huge piece and it's very hard for agencies to do. But maybe there's other ideas. Do you want to jump in first on that?
Yeah, I mean, when you say institutional knowledge, I assume you're talking about document management and things of that sort, right? I mean, I had mentioned, in fact, that's one of my favorite things to study. Actually, when I got my my doctorate in systems engineering, I specialized in document management and using AI for document management. There's a ton of possibilities and a lot of opportunities for using document management. For one of the things that actually one of the most important things is actually document classification, right? When you have a gazillion documents that you need to pour through, where do you start if you need to learn something, right? Which documents do you start and which ones do you follow on with? So there's lots of work in that. One of the things, like I said, is classification. The other thing is if you want to learn something, not a lot of work has been done in this area yet, but document ordering. If you want to learn a particular branch of knowledge, which documents do you want? Which documents do you read first, and which ones do you read later, right? Because one document may be a prerequisite for another one. So that's another area. Another area is summarization of documents. Like I said, even if you find out that you have all these documents that you need to read in the particular order that you're supposed to read them, there's just no way for a human to get all that information and absorb all of it. So one of the things that you can do is document summarization, right? ChatGPT, among other types of solutions, have excellent ways of summarizing those documents. But ChatGPT isn't the only document summarization algorithm or model out there. There are dozens, maybe even hundreds types of models. So definitely, using AI and ML for document management is a very rich area.
Well, that seems like it would be very useful in the federal government where you had such vast troves of information, right? And you're also having new people coming into the government. You're having agencies trying to share information and learn things from one another. That type of ability to more quickly comb through things instead of having people actually doing that, which does still happen in some instances, seems like a huge potential. What do you think, Tony?
Yeah, absolutely. So Vanessa, both you and Art touched on some really interesting things, but the size and scale of our government. Remember, as an institution, the federal government's been around now over 200 years. And as it's evolved and it's grown, so too has that institutional knowledge and the massive data sets that are out there. And how do you sift through all that? And then coming out of the pandemic, what we also saw was lots of change in workforce. So there was the discussion about, the great retiring, so to speak, where people left and they weren't planned to leave. and with them left large swaths of institutional knowledge that they had amassed over maybe 20, 30, 40, even some 50-year-long careers with government. So mapping out an organization, its people, its processes, its functions, its roles, and building on that data set to allow for knowledge management is a way to preserve that information that individuals gain over time, and then enables new workers to come in and get up to speed far more rapidly without a disruption in service to the citizens, or maybe it's protecting our servicemen and women, or even in the education side, helping educators teach and students learn in new ways. So these things matter, and AI and machine learning are going to play a role about it. Think just about how we ourselves use the internet to search and find information today. And now imagine applying that same concept inwardly on our own businesses or our own organizations, or in the case of the federal government, on those institutions, and allowing individuals to know where to go, who to act, how to respond, how this question's been addressed in the past in real time. Big impact.
And before we jump into a kind of discussion about the trust of AI and how you can use it to build trust with citizens, maybe talk a little bit about what are some of the challenges that agencies really face in implementing AI. I mean, clearly one is hiring data scientists and AI engineers. That's a huge one, even in the commercial marketplace. So maybe, Art, you can start us off by talking about what are some of the challenges that agencies face with transparency and trust.
Yeah, trust is absolutely a huge factor in whether or not AI or how AI is going to be adopted in the federal government, local governments, or really industry. Trust is unfortunately a difficult thing to get because people don't understand it. People don't understand AI, and if you don't understand something, you make up things, or you don't trust it. So in some of that is can be attributed to results of what AI or ML provides a lot of times. One of it is bias, right? Depending on what data your model or your machine algorithms have been trained to do, bias can be introduced into the system. And what does bias mean? Bias really means the data or the algorithm has been skewed in some way to favor something else that may not really be there, right? So people see bias, and that's one of the reasons. The other reason is transparency and accountability. A lot of times, your algorithms, especially nowadays with ChatGPT, ChatGPT is a black box, and it takes in data and it spits out some output. For most people, the vast majority of people, they don't know what happens within that black box. It just gives you a result. And if you don't know how that result is gotten, then you may not trust what it provides you. I was introduced to a term actually fairly recently, over the past couple of years, and it's called explainability. And explainability is a huge term that is it's an important term that really became popular with machine learning and natural language processing. And that basically means, how did your machine learning algorithm or model get to the solution that you're asking for? And if the if people don't understand how that works, then you have trust issues.
Right. And Tony, maybe talk about, recently, OpenAI's to talk about ChatGPT, OpenAI CEO, he was on Capitol Hill talking on this matter. And, Tony, maybe talk about what do you think the role of the government should be in regulating the use of AI? And also maybe that a little bit on that transparency issue and why that matters to agencies, like why they need to know what's happening inside that black box.
Yeah, so I'm going to answer your two questions, transparency and what's going on, and coming out of the discussions on Capitol Hill and what regulators should be in. But before I go there, I wanted a couple points that Art touched on that really triggered, which is people don't really understand what AI and machine learning is. And it's evolving so quickly and rapidly. The demand for people who do understand it and have that expertise, it's going to be hard for the government to get hold of those people. So they're going to have to rely on industry. And then it really depends when you look at government, who you're talking to really understand what their trust challenges are going to be. The policymakers are very concerned about the transparency issue or the protection of people's information. But our national security and DoD concerns are how, to stay ahead of our adversaries and how this technology might be used to harm us. And then law enforcement, different concerns around chain of custody and evidence, or our researchers and how they may want to use it. So those things are going to really matter when you're starting to have these conversations with agencies as to who you're talking to what what are going to be the real challenges that they're thinking of and concerned with. Now, as it relates to, where should, the government be, focused on from a transparency perspective? Absolutely. They have to put it out there for public opinion. They've got to educate the citizens how they've been using this technology for decades, and really spend some time talking about those narrow AI uses and how it's cataloging and categorizing information and bucketing and making them more efficient and saving their tax dollars, and how this generative AI is really just an expansion of that now, because today, quite frankly, we have the processing power, the storage capacities, the networking capabilities, and far vast amounts of data that we can run these algorithms and these models against in a meaningful time frame to get those powerful insights that Art was referring to. So as it relates to regulation, I think the government absolutely has to have a hand in protecting its citizens from this technology. Now, at the same time, it's also got to be very careful, because we've had experience with over-regulating, and the pendulum can go too far one way or the other. But in this case, I think the administration and our government's off to a good start. The Office of Science and Technology Policy, OSTP, just offered up a blueprint for an AI Bill of Rights, and it added, 5 principles to guide the design, use, and deployment of artificial intelligence. And it led off with being safe and effective. And then Art also touched on this area about bias. So it wants to make sure that there's protections in that technology against discrimination, any type. And then built in data privacy, and that citizens would have a say in what that is. And then Art also talked on this topic related to transparency, was this idea of notice and explanation. People need to understand where this technology is being applied and how it's being used, and it needs to be transparent. And then we need to have, if there are problems identified, we need to have some sort of recourse or consideration that enables us to either fall back, stop the use of the technology if there's an issue or a problem, or adapt it in such a way so that it's not being misused. So I think a hand in regulating, but it's got to be very prudent. They don't want to go too far one way or the other. They want to take their time and see how this evolves.
All right. Well, before we wrap up, what do you guys think the future holds? What are the long-term, really exciting potentials of AI, ML in government? At the very beginning of our conversation today, we kind of started to talk around that idea of citizen engagement a little bit, but also maybe more along the lines of government decision-making processes. Both those things came up, but maybe you guys can talk about what you expect to really see on the a little bit farther horizon and what's exciting you about that. All right.
Yeah, I'm really excited about smart cities, right? It's not the term is not new, but when we talk about smart cities over the past several years, it's always been with energy, and it's always been with devices, IoT devices connected to the internet and being able to talk to each other. Now, it's a very, very real possibility. It's not just a possibility. I mean, this is happening now, that a lot of artificial intelligence is being injected into smart cities. And what does that mean for the government, for citizenry? That means being able to manage energy usage, energy generation much more efficiently, being able to manage the waste, being able to identify where potential dangers are going to happen, whether it's crime. I'm just reminded of the movie Minority Report,
Right.
with and now that's about 20 years ago, right? It's not quite there yet, right? But there's lots of those, a lot of those components in that movie are actually happening. They're real now, and so being able to handle things like that is really very exciting to me. But there is one thing that I want to touch on, though. With all these things that are happening because of AI and ML, jobs are going to change a lot, and almost every job is going to have to change. There will be some loss of jobs. There are going to be new jobs generated. In fact, yeah, you may have seen recently that the new career path that's popped up is prompt engineer. What's a prompt engineer? It's somebody that's able to efficiently type up commands to ChatGPT or similar types of generative AI to be able to generate what the user wants. But I think the biggest change will not be in loss or gaining of new jobs. It will be transformation of current jobs. So a lot of the things that are mundane can now be automated or will continue to be automated, and that makes the user or the person be able to focus on really the big things and the more creative things of their position.
Thank you. Those are a lot of interesting things in there, honestly. Super fascinating. But Tony, you get the last but quick word because we need
Okay. I think the
wrap up.
future is very bright, and this technology is not new. And I touched on this before. It's just now we have the processing, storage, networking capacity, and thus the data repositories to actually start really putting the power of AI and machine learning to work to vastly improves our lives, providing faster and better insights, which is going to enable us to ensure our safety, right? Protect our first responders, servicemen and women, drive better health outcomes for citizens and veterans. It's just going to improve our interactions and our life experience and overall well-being. And the future is incredibly bright.
Well, I want to thank you both for this really great conversation today. It was lovely to talk to you. I'm Vanessa Roberts. I've been talking with Tony Celeste. He's the Executive Director and General Manager for Public Sector at Ingram Micro, and Art Villanueva. He's the Chief AI ML Technology Architect for Federal Strategic Programs at Dell Technologies. To learn more about the power of technology, visit federalnewsnetwork.com and search Ingram Micro. Have a great day and see you soon on Federal News Network.